kind of talk about some of the challenges that we've seen, particularly in winning business within the small specialty spaces, and how Blitz is pretty well positioned to help out. We do have time for a couple of demos today. So one is going to be our current application process or an example of it, and then the second one's a bit of a peek behind the curtain for some future things that we're working on that will also continue to help folks win business in the space together. So we'll go ahead and jump into it. In terms of challenges within the specialty space, I'm sure this is probably not new for many of you, but a few things that we've observed as one of the bigger challenges in winning new business is that it's slow. So it's very slow, expensive, and confusing. In terms of slow, lots of accord forms. There's multiple supplemental PDFs for different markets too. So if you're going to 5 different markets, they have different supplementals with different questions. It's a lot of manual work. And oftentimes these supplementals, they're not actually geared towards the small commercial spaces. It's more detailed questions that don't really apply to the small businesses that you're trying to insure. So it takes additional time that's really just not that useful. Because if you look at a lot of specialty markets out there, they are kind of not segmented by size. So the same underwriting teams or the same groups that are handling the small accounts, they're also handling the big accounts. And so their one supplemental is not fit for purpose for the small end. And then it's also a lot of back and forth, the old fashioned way, telephone, email tag. And because of all that kind of back and forth, it does slow down the process and it limits our ability to get a bindable quote in front of the client fast. And so when we think about the expense side, it's very expensive to place small business in the specialty markets. It's those same manual processes, old technology that folks have on the carrier side, within broker systems, but particularly within the underwriting that just makes things slow in terms of processing and producing those quotes, binding the policies, servicing the accounts. And the other aspect that does add expenses, as folks are probably familiar with, there's some carriers or MGUs that jump in and out of markets. That the markets do change quite frequently, and there is an importance to be able to adapt to those aspects. But it's very expensive if they do jump in, grab market share, jump out, and now you have to go find a new market to place that business. Every 1 or 2 years, remarketing is a very expensive activity as well. And then it's also confusing. So oftentimes we are looking at classes of business that folks are maybe less familiar with, or characteristics about these businesses that folks are less familiar with. There's also the added aspects of surplus lines filings and taxes. It's very confusing, especially for folks who are not placing a lot of specialty business day to day. And similarly, when it comes to service, it's confusing, but then there's sometimes lack of service in answering those questions or helping out with that process, especially for small accounts. So it kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the slow aspect, where when you have these underwriting companies that are looking at middle market accounts in addition to the small accounts, well, the small accounts go to the back of the queue. And so, which makes sense because if you have $100,000 account versus a $5,000 one, the $100,000 one is going to get worked first. But speed matters the most for that $5,000 account. That's where it's really distinctive from a customer service standpoint. That's where you win the client and where we can actually win that insured together is by making sure that we're very responsive for the small end because they care about kind of speed of getting that business. You're a contractor, you have a job that you're starting next week. You need to go ahead and get that insurance now. You have a construction project you need a builder's risk policy for, or it's a renovation you need a builder's risk policy for. The building's about to close. The mortgage company requires this insurance, tomorrow. How do you get a bindable quote so that they can actually satisfy that need right away? So that's something that's very time sensitive within this space as well. And so how does Blitz really help? We want to be able to divide. We're fast, we're efficient, and we're simple. So on the fast part, which we'll walk through today in the first part of the demo, it takes 5 minutes or less to complete our application on average. And 80% of our submissions result in a bindable quote instantly without referral. So you go into our application, you fill out the information. 80% of the time we will quote that account, and it goes straight through to an actual bindable quote. And then if it does get referred, because there are some rules in our system, we'll kick out for manual review. Well over 70% of those referrals are completed in the same day. The remainder are the next business day. In terms of that efficiency piece, we are built to stay here, and we do not jump in and out of markets. We do launch new products, and we're doing so very thoughtfully to make sure that we can be a true partner for the long term for you, for your businesses, and not have kind of the volatile appetite decisions that can cause a lot of frictional costs and a lot of expenses to remarket those accounts year after year. And in terms of simplicity, we really do have best in class service. We want to continue to improve it. But everything from the resources we have available, making our application journey very simple so that there aren't that it's very easy to use, to actually having a phone number that you can call. So if you call our phone number or shoot an email, we will reply. We will pick up the phone. You'll talk to a person, not a robot, and they'll be able to help you out with your questions. And if they can't help you out right there, I can guarantee you they're hunting here internally to make sure that we find the answers to whatever we can do to help you out. And then for some of our partners, we do have the option of handling the surplus line taxes, fees, and filings. We have integration set up where we've got that process automated. So it's already part of the quote proposal when you present it to the client. They know the total cost of that insurance, inclusive of the taxes and the fees as well. And we can actually act as a surplus lines broker to complete the filings at the same time. So it sounds really good. We do want to go through kind of how we do it, and then we'll jump into the demo. That's where I wanted to spend most of my time. So we're trying to not have too many slides today. And in terms of how we do it, there's smart application questions. So it is a digital application process. We're only asking relevant questions for that risk. So we do not have the one size fits all supplemental application for that industry where there's a lot of questions that don't apply to that risk, a lot of questions for coverages that that person doesn't actually want. So we try to get only the relevant information for that particular submission. We do leverage third-party data integrations. We use it today. We continue to invest in this in the future, and we'll go through a little bit of that when we get into a second part of the demo as well. And a lot of this is trying to avoid asking more questions. So if we can get the information through a third party, we don't need to ask it on the application. We can still do the underwriting and the pricing that we need to make sure that they have the insurance that they need as that business owner. And we do have dynamic coverage forms. So our system is able to have pretty complex attachment rules for the different coverage forms. So it's very different than the BOPs or some of the binding facilities out there where it's here's your BOP. If it fits, it's an okay experience. If it doesn't, it's getting kicked out to referrals. So we're able to flex the actual terms and conditions to fit that risk, which allows us the straight through process, the faster application process. And so being able to support that kind of dynamic coverage form logic is very important from an experience standpoint. And lastly, what kind of supports all of this is a pretty granular decision engine, which speaks a little bit to the other point where a lot of the other platforms out there, to the extent there are, many are Excel workbooks, as folks are probably familiar with. But the other platforms, it's not that granular. It is very much a narrow box, even in the specialty space, or especially in the specialty space. It's fairly narrow box. If it fits it, it's fine. But if not, then it'll get kicked to referral. Whereas ours is per risk decisions, per risk pricing, and per risk forms that our system can actually support. So with that, we'll go ahead and dive into the demo because I wanted to spend most of our time today on that. And like I mentioned at the top, if you do have questions, please feel free to submit them here in the Zoom Q&A, and we'll go through that at the end as well. So with the demo, I wanted to walk through an application process just to show here's what it looks like today for the first part. And I chose a contractor for us to walk through. We do support other products, which I'll give a bit of an overview at the end. But when you first start out an application, you can select which program that we're in, the state, the requested effective date. And I have one here that I already typed in, so folks don't necessarily have to watch me kind of type into the computer here. But when you dive in, we do collect some information around the first named insured, contact information, nothing that's too unfamiliar for folks. And then we start out the process by asking the primary classification or the main classes for this. So this one, I went ahead and just did a below ground swimming pool installation contractor. And when you fill that in, you can select the classes. For contractors in particular, we've got if any classes, if there's stuff that they don't necessarily do normally within that term, but they could, and they want to make sure that they have coverage for that activity. And then we do group kind of our no-go questions up front so you understand what's in appetite, what is out of appetite, and they're all grouped within this attestation. So it's kind of upfront for you to make that decision as well. We do have some additional questions that we'll ask. Is it a new venture, for example? we do not have a minimum threshold for years in business. So we will look at your new ventures. We ask a bit about the experience in the industry, but there's no kind of minimum 3 years in business or those types of requirements. We will actually insure new ventures as well. And then we'll ask questions relevant to that class. Sometimes there are folks who do below ground swimming pool installation. And because they have the excavation equipment and they have some of that, the tooling, maybe they do side excavation work as well. So there's some of these questions that we'll ask based on the initial class that was submitted to make sure that that risk is classified correctly, make sure that has the coverages that they need, and all of the terms and conditions match the actual exposure that we're insuring. So it gets a little bit to that familiarity with some of the classifications there too. Our whole application journey, the data integrations, the questions that we ask are geared to making sure that we're truly fitting the coverage, the pricing to that risk to make sure they are properly insured. Once we have a good idea of here's who they are, that's when we get to the products and coverage selections. So here we've got general liability, and then we also have extension coverages. And you'll notice we do actually have some dynamic add-on coverages here that are specific to that particular risk, sometimes specific to that state. So for this example, because it's a swimming pool contractor, there's an option here if they want limited coverage for swimming pool pop-up. And this doesn't, if I were to apply as a contractor, this doesn't show up. If we were in North Dakota or Ohio, you would see stopgap as an option here. But because this one is in Illinois, which is where I am, it's not a stopgap state. So we don't show that within the general liability coverage selections either. So there is some dynamic logic here to make sure that we are offering things that are relevant for that particular insured. And we have inland marine bundles as well to cover the equipment, the floaters, equipment rental reimbursement, as well with certain sublimits. And on our contractors business, we actually can do the full package. So it's not that common. We know that many of these folks do just need monoline general liability with some of these extensions. But if they do own a building, they have an office, they've got some places where they store some of their equipment, we can bundle in to do a true package policy. You don't have to shop two different markets. You can have one stop for the insurance for that, for the particular contractor as well. For this, we'll go ahead and continue with the monoline GL, since that is the most common. I did include the swimming pool pop-up as well. And you'll see we asked for the limits, 1-2s on the GL, payroll, sales, as well as the limited coverage for the swimming pool pop-up in terms of the limits there. And we do have some additional questions here on servicing, as well as attestations that are specific to the swimming pool contractors, and as well as some other attestations with state limitations, things that we have within our current appetite. And we'll move forward. We get to the AIs. So for AIs, we have blanket additional insured options, primary non-contributory, waiver of sub, and in nearly every state, these things are included with no additional charge. This is something also that we tend to do that's different than some of the other markets out there. We know the servicing costs of some of these insureds, it's expensive. So to have specifically scheduled AIs is, it takes your time, takes the client's time, and it takes our time. And that adds up in terms of expenses and things that nobody really wants to worry about too much. So to the extent that they need specifically scheduled ones, we're happy to accommodate that. We will do those and process them. But we will also include blanket AIs for the scheduled for the ones that are required by contract, et cetera, no additional charge. It helps with the servicing costs of these types of these contractors as well, to just make it pretty easy on everybody. And with that, we do ask a bit about loss history, and if there is loss history, we'll ask for uploaded loss runs, or have that subject as a part of binding. And then we have some optional questions if there's additional information, pictures, submission documents that you'd like to submit as well with the submission. We don't require anything additional, but those are helpful sometimes if if we're reviewing the account, it can help speed up that process. And with that, we get to a bindable quote here. So that's the full application. If you have a below ground swimming pool contractor, this is actually the bindable premium for this account. So you can see if, let's say, for example, sometimes there's options that they want to select. Maybe they need a higher damage to premises rented to use sublimit because their lease contract requires it. You can actually flex that limit right here in the drop down, see what the premium is, and it's bindable premium. So when you get to the property side, you can change the deductibles. You can deselect it. So maybe we presented this to the client and said, I really don't need that limited coverage for the swimming pool pop up. You can deselect it yourself. No back and forth with the underwriter. Just modify the different options, and you can get back to the actual binding of that policy or of that quote. If this looks good, we can kind of continue on. We do have some sections for fees. And then right here is actually when we're hitting an integration to automatically calculate the surplus line taxes for that particular risk or for that quote. And so this is actually hitting a database that will update it. So if you're in that kind of odd county in Kentucky that has its own tax, or if you're over in Washington and has the fire marshal's tax, this stuff is all included. So when you actually present this to the client, you have the full cost of insurance in front of them, inclusive of the taxes and fees. So it's not just the premium amount, and this is done automatically. So it's actually just included within the quote proposal right here. So this is the full quote proposal. It obviously has the premium summaries, the coverages, and the limits. In addition to this, we do print out all of the information that was put into the platform. So you'll see the information that we plugged in. It's printed out so the insured, agent, they can all review it, just make sure that it looks right. And then there's the TRIA documents, signing of the document pages as well. That's all included within this packet. And then there's also diligent effort forms. So for certain states, they have specific diligent effort or diligent search forms. We have all of those loaded into our system. So for convenience, we do include them. This is Illinois, so Illinois doesn't have a specific one for this state. So we have the generic one. But let's say we were in California. In California, they have the D1 notice. There's a different form you have to attach, as well as the D2 that goes on the policy. Those are all configured within our platform to make sure that it's included within the packet. And then to the extent it's required in the policy, it's also included in the policy. So we include that just for the convenience of everybody, so you don't have to go find that template to be able to go fill it out. And lastly, we'll go through the binding process. So we present it to the insured. If it looks good, we'll go ahead and get it signed. We do have e-sign for the e-sign piece, which I'll go ahead and do that really quickly, but then we'll actually just do the upload docs because it's easier to demo since this will actually try to e-sign it. But for the e-sign part, if I go ahead and put in, let's say the information here, what we'll do is we send out a link. It's like a DocuSign link. We technically use HelloSign, but it's a link that goes out to the insured. It also will go out to the agent here for them to go sign it. You can re-trigger that reminder if they didn't see it or if it went to spam or something like that. Directly here in the portal, you can see it. And this will also update real time. So once that document is signed, you'll see a little check mark here saying, oh, the insured signed it, and then it's ready for the agent's signature. And we'll go ahead and cancel that process so you don't watch me dig through my emails to go find this stuff and sign it. But once we have the signed docs, we bind and issue the policy. So for us, oh, sorry, I messed up there. For us, there is no binder. Once it's been bound, it's issued. So if that insured needs proof of coverage, they need that deck page to get something, they have it in their hands once it's been bound. They don't have to wait 30 days or 60 days for that policy to be issued. They don't have to wait a week for the binder to be manually put together and shipped off. You've got it right here within our portal that you can download the entire policy doc and be able to share it both for your records as well as for the insureds. So you'll see here it generates it and it's downloadable right away. So here's the full policy document and it's got all the forms in it, etc. So that's the full experience that we have on the application side. So this is the current state. The second part of the demo that we wanted to walk through was more for fun. It's a little bit illustrative, but this is something that we wanted to show as some future state stuff that we're working on to help make this process even easier, show kind of how we're imagining leveraging even more of the third-party data integrations and stuff to really optimize this experience for everybody. So with that, we've got, this is just running locally on my computer, so it might be a little bit slow here, but we want to kind of imagine how do we make this even easier, leveraging some of the newer technology, whether it's kind of AI, third-party data integrations, and bringing them all together. So here you'll kind of show what's possible, and this is stuff that we're working on that you'll start seeing facets of this next year within our application and journey. So we'll go ahead and do like put in a business name and address. I'm going to use Shamrock Club. I'm based here in Chicago. A couple blocks away is this bar. So we'll go ahead and do Shamrock Club, Chicago, Illinois. Let's say it's a bar and tavern, and this is optional. And I'll go ahead and click this. So what happens right now, this is the future state piece, but this is actually running real time. So this is not kind of magic behind the scenes. This is happening. We go ahead and search the web for all the information that we can find about this business and incorporate other third-party data integrations as well. Let's go ahead and kind of synthesize that, take an insurance-specific view of that information that we get back, and try to tease out what's real, what's not. And that's kind of the really hard part that folks are grappling with in leveraging third-party data integrations, is separating out fact from fiction. It's because we want to make sure that we're properly classifying and insuring this client. We want to make sure we really know their operations and the exposures and the risks that they need to be covered. And so the accuracy is very, very important for this part of the process, which is one of the challenges that folks have encountered so far. So that's an area that we have spent a lot of time on, is preventing kind of the hallucinations or the bad data aspect for this piece. And it's something that we're continuing to invest in to try to get better. But I'll walk through a couple of the pieces of information that we're actually able to pull using this data. So I have a couple other examples that we'll walk through while this is, but I'll show you the real time. It takes 1 to 2 minutes at the moment to pull all of this together. So while that's wrapping up, I will go ahead and pop over to a contractor that we did, and I just have kind of loaded in here. So when you do pull this in for the contractor, you'll see what we get is this information here. It's a summary about this business. It kind of talks about all the types of stuff it does: reconstruction, rehab, repairs, and it will actually document its work. So where'd you get this information? Why do you think this? How confident is it? So that we and you will be able to validate and say this information makes sense, it doesn't make sense, etc. For that stuff. And then once we have that information, we then classify the risk. And this is an insurance specific classification. So it's really geared towards that actual insurable exposures for that customer. So in this case, Sarman Construction in Alameda, California, it's a remodeling contractor. And here's the ISO class code. Here's the program within Blitz that it's eligible in. And then it describes its work of saying, why did you classify it this way? Here's kind of the considerations we have, and what else could it be if it's unsure on that piece. And then lastly, how do we pre-fill that application so it gets back to making this experience even better than it is today, where let's ask for fewer questions. Let's try to pre-fill all of the information that we can about it. So for example, here, do they do demolition work? It answers it. Are they doing painting or coating? Yes, because it looked at Build Zoom and it found this license that does this type of stuff. So it can actually pre-fill some of that information on our application as well. And I'll jump back to the Shamrock Club example here. So I know I'm moving a bit quickly, but I see several questions coming in. So I want to make sure that we have time for that. But for the Shamrock one, let's see what it pulled here while we were waiting. You can see it is a neighborhood bar and grill. People often shop there or stop there on their way back from work here in Chicago. And if you go to the eligibility, did it classify it right? It did. It's a bar and tavern, which is currently out of appetite for us. So you can see that right away. And then it classifies it, and it will explain why it classified it that way. And then lastly, it gets into pre-filling the application. So what information was it able to pull? Do they serve alcohol? Yes. Here's why it says that. Does it have an area where patrons can drink without dining? Again, yes. Hours of operation, very common question for a lot of these types of exposures too. And it can pull that and answer those questions. So this is very, insurance specific type of training for leveraging this third-party data integrations. And again, this is kind of a sneak, like a peek behind the curtain of the types of things that we're working on to continue to invest in the specialty space. Because one of the things about Blitz is we are far from a finished project. We specialize in small commercial specialty business. So all of our investments that we're making from a technology, from a personnel service, is about doing really, really well in this space, making sure that we can win those clients together. And this is kind of an example of that. We're going to continue to put investment in this space to really improve the process, the efficiency, the underwriting, the coverages. Yes, we're launching new products as well. So we're continuing to expand the types of classes of business and the coverages that we're offering to. But by partnering with Blitz, it's partnering with what we do today. It is also partnering for what we're planning to do in the future and what we're continuing to build out as a company. And we love to have partnerships that give us feedback and help us refine and inform and improve our product, our service, our experience, you name it. So that's kind of the main pieces for the demo. I know I went pretty quickly through that stuff. I did want to end, at least in the structured content part, our primary areas that we do business today. So we've got the contractors, which I mentioned, and we did the demo through. We will do a builder's risk product as well. So that's the inland marine. It's on a per project basis, and you can actually bundle owner's interest. So if you need that premises liability for the owner on that particular project, it can be bundled in and packaged with one journey, which is, I think, very unique for what we can actually offer for builder's risk. We'll do new construction and renovation. We do cannabis retailers, dispensaries, grow facilities, as well as commercial lesser's risk where they have a cannabis tenant, because many times those cannabis exclusions are on those lesser's risk policies, and those folks are actually underinsured because those exclusions may limit the actual coverage that they have because they have that type of tenant. So there is some specific insurance offerings that we do have for that. In addition to our general commercial lesser's risk program, we do retail services. So anything from your smoke shops, convenience stores, to just general retail mercantile stores as well. And then we have, oh, sorry, I think I accidentally listed builder's risk twice. But special events is the other one. So special events GL, so 5 day or shorter small premises liability event coverage. And then the two at the bottom, auto services and vacant commercial, those are brand new for us. So we actually just launched those this month. They're in a soft launch kind of period. So it's not the quote ratio, it's not the straight through ratio that we strive to have. But they're kind of very, very new. We're looking at the submission volume and we're continuing to refine those programs today. But for the folks who have access, feel free to send us submissions in either of those. We're taking a look at them. We've bounced a decent number of policies actually last month, and we're continuing to improve those as we get our feet wet in those spaces. And then there's more to come, so probably that I can't cover today, but we've already got more products that we're planning to launch into next year. So we're very excited about expanding our offerings as well as improving the experience itself. That's what I have for the structured content. And I know I went through a little bit fast, but I see some questions coming in. So I want to go ahead and get those addressed here. So let me go ahead and pull that up. Yes, there's a question about the recording when we're done. Yes, we would love to. We'll share that. We'll also share kind of the slide materials as well. And then also, if you ever want to reach out, feel free to contact us. We're happy to always jump on a call, do demos, answer any questions that you have too. And then there is a question about payment options. So it's a good question. The demo that I just shared was set up with that account as agency bill, but we do support that direct bill. And so right before the actual binding of that policy, that's where you would get the payment options. So it can be pay in full. We do have integration set up to automatically allow for that premium finance options directly within that journey. So you can select the different options there, and it's all done within our platform. So you don't have to go out to a separate premium finance company. You don't have to go out to a different system. It's embedded within that flow for that journey. So you can, and we do accept credit card, ACH, wire, different payments there. But it would happen right after or right before the actual where you saw the policy document getting shown. Another question: how would this work when you have new ventures that have no online presence or when names are similar to other businesses? This is a very good question. The short answer is not as well. However, there are other third-party data integrations that we're currently working on that have information that's not necessarily just from a website. So things like the review sites or social media sites out there, there's permits and licenses kind of data sets out there. So it's not going to be quite as well or fancy as what we saw there in the future state, but there are some areas that we can actually continue to fill in to make that process easier. There's a question about the business verification search, and sorry, I went through that probably a little too fast. But this screen that we see here, this is our current experience. This one is not currently accessible. So this is the sneak behind, like the sneak peek behind the curtain of future things that we're working on. So you'll start seeing some of these capabilities really come to life next year. There is a question on auto service of just kind of going over auto service and what we have there. Um, Happy to go through. I'll do a brief overview, but I will say to get kind of the fullest overview, I'd highly recommend reaching out to one of our business development folks, and they're going to be able to answer your questions in a bit more detail. But for the auto services piece, we will look at car washes, quick lubes, auto repair, detailers, windshield kind of repair shops. And we do have a garage keeper's legal liability option there too. So when they have autos in their care, custody, and control, they're worried about property damage to those non-owned autos. We do offer coverage for that. On the non-owned auto side, it's more limited in terms of what we currently have on non-owned auto liability. It's restricted to the premises. So if they're moving their car around the premises, that there is coverage for that. But if the non-owned auto is off premises, currently that's not in our appetite. But those are kind of the main classes as well as the main unique coverage offerings. But the other ones, which I did mention, was the package. So general liability and property also available within the auto service. So another question around shopping strips or different mixed use type stuff. So very good question. Actually, so today on commercial lesser's risk, it's truly just commercial, so no mixed use or habitational. That is one of the things that we're working on at the moment is opening up that appetite for mixed use. So you'll see that next year when we go ahead and do that. Um, let's see. I think that was payment plans, which I believe we covered. There's a question on tire shops and auto. Unfortunately, no, we don't do, especially used tire shops. Some incidental sales are okay, so it's not a full kick out if they do any tire sales, but it's more about an incidental risk than kind of targeted. Another question, if we're available in Mississippi, yes. So we are available in all states with the exception of Hawaii, Idaho, and Louisiana. So that's kind of where we are today. Let's see. Types of cannabis that's insured. We do cannabis dispensaries, both medical and adult use, plus they're mixed. We have tobacco shops that sell CBD products, indoor grow facilities. There are some distributors and manufacturers as well. Those are eligible classes. However, it is not that common, or there's not as many. There's many more dispensaries and indoor grows. So those are probably our top two classes there. Another question on auto service, if it's on a garage or GL form, great question. It's on a GL form and the garage keeper's legal liability is an endorsement to that GL form. Let's see. Credit card fees, if the credit card is used, yes, there is. However, I think there may be a change coming there shortly. So that one, I think we are in some negotiations to actually remove that fee. Let's see. They have a quote on commercial lesser's risk, but don't see the agency bill options. That one, I'll get back to you. So I'll make a note on this application and have our broker success or sales reps reach back out to you on that one. And then let's see. I think we have most of these. Warehouses are currently not in appetite for us at the moment. And then for vacant, there's another question on vacant commercial. It's vacant if it's land or buildings. It's a great question. Right now, it's vacant commercial buildings. If there is, land adjacent to that building, we're okay with it as up to 5 acres. But purely vacant land currently is not in appetite. It's really just targeted towards vacant commercial buildings. And no auto dealerships for the auto services right now. So dealerships is currently out of scope. And then gas stations are currently out of scope as well. So for the convenience stores, we look at pure convenience stores, not pure gas stations. There's a question about adding multiple locations. Yes, you can. So for pretty much all of our programs, with the exception of builder's risk, you can do multiple locations on a single policy. For the builder's risks, it's per project. So, but for all the other ones, you can add. So if I were to select something there, or select a property coverage in that demo, there's a place to enter the property schedule, and you can add multiple locations. Yes, we are in Alaska. I would say we don't have a lot of policies in Alaska, but we do have a few. And then we do have another question around carrier downloads. I'm assuming that means carrier downloads into your agency management system. Great question. We don't have that today in terms of the integrations. I know there's a secondary part of, are we thinking about it? Yes, we are thinking about it. That is something that we've had some introductory conversations with those systems, but no dedicated timeline or thing that I can say right now on when that would come to fruition. But we are aware of that capability, and are kind of evaluating the ability for us to go do that. Question on partially vacant shopping strips. Yes, so we, as a part of our vacant program launch, we expanded our commercial lesser's risk appetite. So before November, we required at least 30 or up to 30% vacancy. But now that we have the vacant commercial offering within our commercial lesser's risk offering, we can go up to all the way, essentially. So up until it's fully vacant. So we do not have a maximum required vacancy percentage or occupancy percentage on the commercial lesser's risk. So if it's partially vacant, we will look at it. Like I mentioned, we're in the soft launch period. So if you do submit us to those today, it will get referred, and we'll take a look at it. We're making sure all the forms, the rates, those things look correct. But you can submit to those partially vacant buildings within our commercial lesser's risk program today. Just had a question on GL with the builder's risk. Yes, we can. So it's an owner's interest, and it's a kind of the premises liability portion, and it's the same. So if you go into our platform, you look at the builder's risk offering, we can go ahead and do that. And we can package it together. We will also do monoline GL on the builder's risk, so monoline owner's interest policy. So you could get just the builder's risk, just the owner's interest. You can do them together. All right. Think those are all the questions that I see here. And let's see. There's a couple questions of folks who had joined late, and those folks will, yes, we will send out a recording as well as a copy of the presentation too. And I think there's other question here on amending some of the questions for annually payroll to ask for each owners and officers. It's a great question. I don't have an answer on updating that kind of user experience here today, but it is something that I remember folks bringing up. So I think it is on our list to make an update. But unfortunately, I don't have like an exact timeline on that one. Says, what about the tenant for the GL if they're doing a build out and asked to carry the GL with the builder's risk and the tenant is not an owner? Yes, we can look at that as well. So they'll still be the tenant would have to be the named insured on that policy, but we will look at that too. Question on if there's a specific rep assigned to a territory or agency. Yes, we do. So when you're signed up, we do have a rep that will be assigned to you on the business development side. And then we do also have our general kind of shared contact information here, phone number, those things that anyone can call into and get directed to the right resources as well. All right. I think we made it through all the questions here. Go give it a second. All right. Well, appreciate everyone taking the time. Feel free to please reach out if you have any questions, feedback, things that we can improve on. If you're already partners with us, we appreciate the business and the partnership. If you're interested in working with Blitz, feel free to reach out. We'd love to work with you. But thanks for taking the time, everyone, in this morning, and hope you all have a great weekend.